Hi folks, welcome to Tuesday's edition of the I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. We'll touch on the presser today. I don't think it'll take such a big chunk of the programme today. I think we'll mostly concentrate today on Boris Johnson, the saviour of the world, king of the world, as he would style himself, no doubt. There's an awful lot going on at Westminster that is hiding under coronavirus and the Leicester lockdown and so on, that really needs to be put out there. So we're going to spend most of the programme on that. But we'll kick off with the presser. Stuart, you caught the end of it. I didn't. Tom Gordon got his arse kicked.
Yes, but right at the end. I'll come to him in a second. Early on, was it the first question in the thing then? Glenn Campbell, every independista's favourite BBC journalist. He opened the questioning and he asked 4 questions. 4. However, the First Minister, the professional to the end, she was asked about Boris's speech, and she did say that basically, I'm not expecting any new consequentials. That's no more extra money. She pointed out that by comparing himself to FDR, oh goodness me, Roosevelt, who spent 40% of American GDP to boost the economy, when all he's offering to spend is 0.7% to boost the British economy, is, well, far too low. So there's no new money there. Towards the end, yes, it was quite odd. Tom Gordon of the Herald, another hyena. he tried to have a go. There were 2 or 3 of them tried to have a go at the First Minister because Boris was talking about the Union and how wonderful it was and how well it had worked together in this crisis, apparently. I'm sorry, I didn't watch him. I value my TV set. But the First Minister said, look, I'm just doing my duty and I don't stop in the middle of press conferences to do press-ups.
I missed that. Anything stand out for you at today's presser?
Nah, not really, mate. It must be, I mean, it's nice to be a vested interest, I suppose, like Aberdeen Airport or the Scottish Tourism Association, and get a wee call for one of these hyenas, because you ken you're going to be on the telly at lunchtime. Asked questions about the opinions of the chief executive of Aberdeen Airport or the boy at the head of the Scottish Tourism Association. Just ask the question, you mean, Nicola, are you going to stop English people coming up here? They've not got the balls to even come out and say that, so they use somebody else to try and wheedle an opinion out of you. And I think they were fairly slapped down. Frankly, I think this, given the Leicester lockdown and given the English numbers, I think this thing could grow arms and legs, and that something might have to happen. As much as Nicola doesn't want it to happen, I think something might have to happen on that.
That's the cat out of the bag. The Leicester lockdown is the cat out of the bag. There is no way now that the unionists can make an argument for not shutting the Scottish border if it's deemed necessary.
Well,
unless you're Jackson Carlo on Twitter this morning.
The point is, Norrie, that these hyena journalists were trying to make it a constitutional issue because it's a Scottish border. And she clearly pointed out that what if it was Leicester, basically.
Well, I mean,
it's a public health issue.
That's the point. I don't know where they've thrown the ring round Leicester, whether it's the county it's in or just the city.
Neither do the people of Leicester, Norrie. There's about 3 different rings on the map at the moment, and they didn't ken which one applies.
I know. They must be having a constitutional argument all over Leicestershire right now.
Well, as I say, I mean, now that that's had to be done, if it becomes necessary to shut the Scottish border, their arguments are all out the window. And I don't ever think it'll happen, by the way. I don't think she would ever do it.
I'm waiting for a joke about closing this. Somebody else will come up with it before the end of the day. Closing the Scottish border, and Boris promising to duel the A1 all the way to Edinburgh.
Interestingly, that he mentioned that in his speech, given that it was the Scottish government that finished dueling the A1, had nothing to do with the UK.
That, I mean, that's going to be if it ever comes to a debate about, a second independence referendum, expect everything good that the Scottish government's done to be taken into the ownership of the Westminster government.
Well, even the policies that the Tories spent years and years saying were stupid, like abolishing prescription charges and bridge tolls, will that be a benefit that's accrued to us from the broad shoulders of the Union?
The
absolutely.
tax flying from the Forth Road bridges, all of them.
I'd like to see them try.
Absolutely. Both of you know very well that all this money comes from English taxpayers. Nothing to do. We just live on benefits in Scotland.
Because we don't pay tax.
We ain't nobody paying any tax in Scotland.
Well,
there's absolutely no revenue comes out of our industry whatsoever. Come what I mean? It's all subsistence level industries. We didn't make any money off oil. All that fish that we sell to the French and the Dutch and that, they didn't pay top dollar for it. So there's no money out of it.
We've moved quite neatly into the second subject of the day, which is Boris Johnson as the saviour of the British economy. I think maybe there's 2 points to be made. One you made off air, Stuart, which was the FDR reference and the Roosevelt reference. What I find quite strange about this is how badly educated the public are on the economics of that. It didn't, in fact, save the American economy. It was the Second World War that saved the American economy.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, perhaps that wasn't the point, maybe, but yes, because there was an awful lot of up and down. He had 12 years, Roosevelt, well, nearly before he died, because he died before his 12 years was up. So you mustn't think about modern day maximum 8 years as president. But the idea that Boris Johnson can line him, he pretends to be Churchillian, and now he wants to be fed FDR. FDR was attacked by the banks. JP Morgan, the man that ran that bank, set up, he tried to get a coup or a fascist coup organized against FDR. And excuse me, ask Joe Public which side of that argument Boris Johnson would be on, and even the Tory voters of Red Cap would say, oh, Boris Johnson be with the banks.
Jimmy, you've got numbers at your fingertips about what it's actually worth. Was it you or was it Stuart that said that the £5 billion?
Now, let's be honest, be fair to him now, Norrie, that's just his infrastructure spending. Rishi Sunak's going to be making all kinds of more spending announcements over the next few weeks. That was Boris's get out for it being such a pittance of a number. But roughly, if it was to be anything like FDR's New Deal, he would be injecting £900 billion into the UK economy on today's terms. And he's obviously not going to do anything like that. But if it was to be, I mean, we had the suggestions yesterday for Scotland of £80 billion, which would be 4% of GDP. So, it's a nonsense, mate. And a lot of this money has already been committed. We're just getting the usual repackaging nonsense that the Tories have so adept at. It was all in their manifesto. The school building programme, the road building programme. I didn't ken...
The 642 million new hospitals.
New hospitals, but only 6 actually getting built.
Are we still at that? Or is he still claiming that he's going to build 40? Aye.
I was just surprised at how definite Sturgeon was about there being no consequentials out of this. She seems pretty certain that there's no new money there.
Well, it's because there's no new spending commitments. He's announced it all before, so they've already phoned London and said, "What's our cut?" And been told we've probably already got our cut. Let's be honest. This is spending that all he's doing is accelerating the programme. It's spending that was announced in the election campaign.
Does anybody know what's happening with the money that didn't appear, that was promised? I think it was for charities, support for charities. London promised, I don't know,
there was
100 million.
There was about 60 million consequentials and 10 million for charities, mate. No, they've gone all quiet on that. So presumably that's just, we have to forget about that now and stop asking the question.
I think we're forgetting something that we are getting kind of used to. nobody actually believes a word about any of these announcements that they make. They make them all the time, and they never come through and fulfill.
We
Well, I
do.
think it was noticeable when Boris decided to turn to the union during his speech. He could only come up with two things. He told us that the union had saved us. The union had saved us from this pandemic. And the two things that he pointed to were the British Army helping out in testing around the country. You'll forgive me, but the British Army testing in Scotland was negligible. We didn't really need it. And the fact that it took us 2 or 3 weeks to get any of the bloody results for the British Army testing, we could have done without it, frankly. And the other one was the huge power of the UK Treasury. All that happened is they went and borrowed money, or they go to the Bank of England to create it on a computer screen. An independent Scotland could have done exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Borrow it,
as
we could borrow it as much as we want on tiny interest rates, exactly the same as the UK government. So those broad shoulders and that powerful treasury, that's a nothing as well. So his 2 point things that he had to point out to how wonderful the UK was for Scotland, you can dismiss them in 2 minutes.
Oh, they're absolutely rubbish. I mean, you've also got to think about what some oil analyst, hedge fund manager a few years ago pointed out that an independent Scotland doesn't even need to bring that oil out of the ground. Just leave it there. Mm-hmm. And that underpins a Scottish currency because it's a backup.
Exactly. It's the same way. I've had this argument with people in the past, and they go on about, Kent, you've got your deficit, look at JERS, blah, blah, blah. It's all a nonsense. It's all figures on a piece of paper, figures on a computer screen. The reality of the Scottish tax regime, an independent Scotland could make pretty small changes to the tax regime in the North Sea that would bring in hundreds of billions of pounds in the first couple of years of independence. And not one of those oil companies out there would pull out because they were actually having to pay their fair share. And if they did, there's hundreds of other oil companies all around the world that would take their place in a heartbeat.
What's happening in the North Sea at the moment anyway is that smaller companies are taking on the rigs because they can afford to work on a lower margin than BP and Shell and whatnot.
Oh, come on, mate. BP and Shell got bloody tax rebates a couple of years ago. They got paid to extract oil at the North Sea.
It's ridiculous. It is. So, Stuart, you're a little bit worried about the Henry VIII powers that the Westminster Parliament took to its own. I should explain, because there might be people listening that don't understand this. These are basically powers that Westminster took to override the devolved administration's areas of responsibility, agriculture, fishing, etc. And you're worried that they're going to be deployed in an even wider range.
Well, let's summarize what the three of us agreed on just before we started recording. We surprise ourselves at times. Quite regularly, an article gets published by somebody we don't even know that sums up everything we've been talking about. And today there was the same, an article by David Henk, and he's talking about all the powers that are being currently being stolen to improve the power of the executive. That's the government that we have at the moment, as opposed to the legislature. In other words, the powers that are disappearing from the House of Commons. They're planning to reduce the days that the House of Commons will sit. They're planning to reduce the laws that will require them to go to the House of Commons to get ratified. They're planning to remove powers. Well, they're going to take extra powers so that even the Scottish Parliament legally legislates something, they can cancel that law. I mean, it's horrific. Where are we going? The word dictator, I think, was in the headline of the article. David Henk, look it up.
It's clear that Dominic Cummings, I don't think he has much time for devolution whatsoever. the reality probably hasn't got any time whatsoever for Northern Ireland or Wales, because Northern Ireland and Wales basically cover their own ass. I'm not sure Northern Ireland actually does. And Northern Irish economy is a lot stronger than people give it credit for. But I think it probably still ends up being subsidised from the rest of the UK. Scotland doesn't. Scotland pays in a big fat wedge of cash and gets maybe half that, maybe even 3/4 of it some years back. But every year, I'm 52 in a few weeks, guys. Every year that I've lived, Scotland has been in surplus. And we are told that we have a deficit every year. I'd be interested to have a wee chat with a few Indian people, because I think it was 144 years in a row that India officially recorded a deficit according to Whitehall. Meanwhile, trillions were taken out of their economy by the UK. It's an accounting exercise in Whitehall. We're only there to provide money for them to spend.
Well,
And that's why they'll take all these powers back, because devolution makes it awkward for them to keep stealing for Scotland, because we keep asking the question, what are you doing?
Basically, powers, the history of the British Empire is, but basically, as soon as a colony starts costing them money, oh, we got to spend money sending soldiers in there because of constant uprising, we can't afford it. Then they start considering letting them go and giving them their independence.
I'm convinced, and have been since Cummings came on the scene, not so much Boris Johnson, but Cummings, that what we're seeing is the Americanization of our parliament. What they're trying to do is give the Prime Minister the same sort of powers that the President has, without the Prime Minister having to face public. If you let me finish.
No, he's already got the powers. He's more powerful than an American president, because there is a written constitution in America.
Right, if you let me finish, I would have got to the point you've just made. The real point about it is he doesn't have to face the public to get to the position of Prime Minister. At least an American president can lose his position. A PM is appointed by a very small cohort of Tories. So it's not democratic.
He has the power of a king. It's called the Crown in Parliament.
He doesn't have, or he's trying to get rid of any scrutiny, which is the really worrying thing.
Yeah,
if you do things without the reasons being made public, or at least debated, you're then a dictator.
The fact that they're also trying to defenestrate the judges, they're trying to defenestrate the courts, remove powers for them, remove jurisdiction from them, and it's all being done, basically at the moment, it's all being done behind closed doors with threats to senior judges that, just for an example, jury trials will disappear in England and Scotland, by the way, because if they bring it in there, they will force it through here as well. That the right to a jury trial just, we can't afford to do that. It takes too much time. There's too much of a backlog. And if they put that through in England, then that effectively means that the judiciary and everyone within the legal community will spend 5 to 10 years trying to make a sow's lug out of a horse's arse, because that's what they'll put through. And at that point, nothing government does will face any scrutiny for the legal profession, because they'll be too bloody busy.
Well, the simple point is that with evil now being in place, English votes for English laws, and the Parliament obviously being totally overrun with English people, the Welsh Parliament, the Westminster Parliament, and then you come to the budget aspect of it. If they do away with jury trials, the budget for the Crown Prosecution Service, etc., will go down. Therefore, what comes to Scotland to run our judiciary will go down. So you might actually be forced into a situation where you can't afford jury trials because they cost money. And that applies across the board. to everything. Anything that England cuts a budget on, it cuts Scotland's budget, regardless of what Scotland wants.
Aye.
And people need to remember that.
Well, it's another bit of ammunition for those of us who advocate independence. I know that there's still folk trying to push to get a referendum this year. You know, this court case that's going through now, but that ain't going to happen. But next year's election becomes more and more vital every day because Boris, as I say, we're a cash cow. England can't afford to let Scotland go, so we're going to have to fight for it. But we're going to have to fight for it on solid footing. I'm not sure we've got solid footing now. I have my worries about the internal.
Well, but the thing
amongst the SNP at the moment.
The thing is, Jimmy, it's powers that we've had are dripping away.
Aye. Aye, but we're not doing anything to stop that, Stuart.
They're not dripping. They're leaving as a tsunami.
All right.
I mean, we have no say over our agriculture and fisheries now.
It's
huge parts of the Scottish economy.
Apparently, these Henry VIII powers include powers to create new criminal offences, impose unlimited fines on people, overrule, in some cases, legislation in the Scottish Parliament, and 150 new powers to change duties and taxes on businesses and individuals.
Presumably, though, we have some legal recourse, although our government isn't taking it. But presumably, we've got legal recourse to say, listen, these powers are of the English crown. They're not of the crown. They're not of the crown of Scotland. These Henry VIII powers. Therefore, you're imposing them upon us.
One of my arguments about using the Treaty of Union to get out of the Union has always been the fact that they don't stick to the letter of the treaty, and that the independence of the Scottish law courts is a case in point. The minute that they turn around and say, right, we're overriding what is Scottish law with English law, they've broken the treaty.
The fact that there is a Supreme Court, the fact that the fact that Scottish decisions can be taken to a court that sits in London is a treaty breach. But as I say, I worry that all these wee factions that are fighting out amongst kind of nonsense about the GRA and hate crimes and all that crap, you do wonder why we're letting student politics actually, and student politicians abuse and lie about SNP members on Twitter, and they're not getting punished for it. You know, you'll forgive me for talking about the GRA, for example, as a niche issue, because it's not. It's turned into an issue that affects everybody. And 51% of the population of this country are getting attacked by this small niche issue. But it's interesting to note that party unity is being questioned over wee things like that. It's an awfully funny time for small issues to be blown up quite so big when we actually do need party unity, and we need a solid election campaign, and we need to win an outright majority next year.
Well, I'm kind of hoping that Dominic Cummings continues to basically ignore Scotland and does something really stupid that riles the Scots.
Well, that was my argument the other day, I think, Norrie.
In what sense?
Well, I mean, there could come a time where, given that they're ideologically driven, these people, Dominic Cummings and his gang, that there may come a moment. Wow, sorry, that's a very low plane. There may come a moment where the ideology becomes more important of their Brexit plan, and to get close to America is more important than hanging on to Scotland.
I think it has to be an issue where they override some decision that people agree with in Scotland. It has to be a decision where they go, no, you're not having that. You're going to have to do what we do. And I can see that. I can't see them doing it quite as bluntly as that. I think they'll fall into the hole. But I expect it to be more than one hole, but we need a big hole to motivate the Scots to turn around and say, nah, we're not having that.
I think we can be quite optimistic about that, because Cummings does consider himself far cleverer than everybody else, but he's kind of proved with his behaviour running away to Barnard Castle, for example, that he concentrates on the big picture and misses the minutiae, and he is going to do something stupid and trip his cell up.
I think they might make a mistake with the consequentials. I think Richie Sunak is actually an austerity fan, and I think what they're going to find is that they'll do some big project in England, as they've already done with Crossrail and the sewage system in London, which we paid for, or paid part of, as a national project. I think we might see them do something on those lines that gets the backs of Scotland up. You know, oh, we're going to build blah, 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 and that'll be 3 billion quid, and there's no consequentials going to the devolved communities.
End of the day, mate, they can always just set the Barnett formula aside at any one point in time. They've got a big enough majority to do that.
That would do it. If they set aside the Barnett, that would definitely do it.
I thought we'd already agreed they're more likely to do a drip, drip, drip of powers so that there isn't one big crisis.
I don't think.
No, their crisis is next year when the SNP have 72 seats in that parliament and say, by the way, if we are not getting a referendum, we are having a referendum. And then they have to, then England, or Britain as England, as Peter likes to call them, they would have to tell us that that's illegitimate. They would have to outright tell us that we cannot have self-determination. And then they fall on their own sword at that point, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not sure that this SNP administration is willing to go down that line. But if you've got 100,000 people standing outside Holyrood screaming at them to take that to the International Court of Justice, I think they'd probably have to.
And I didn't agree that it was a drip, drip, drip. It was a tsunami that nobody noticed south of the border.
So is there any possibility that the time in the reasonably near future, let's say 2 or 3 years, that the SNP anger the public, the independence desiring public, to such an extent that the people would turn up at Holyrood and occupy the Parliament?
I'm not sure they'd turn up and occupy it, mate. If anything else is
and you get shot if you try.
Aye, there's machine gun toting guards splattered all around that place. But I wouldn't mind betting that if the SNP don't do something, I mean, come on, mate. Boris Johnson's a catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe of a man. And if we manage to get rid of it, we're going to get Michael Gove, because Murdoch's decided he's the man, and the rest of the Tory party will go along with it. So surely at some point,
you won't get
150,000 Scottish people to stand outside Holyrood and shout and scream, say, "Come on, get us away from these bastards."
Michael Gove could shoot Scottish babies to maintain the union, and he still wouldn't be PM. He's Scottish.
He's no Scottish, mate.
You'll never see another Scottish PM.
Michael Gove's no Scottish. You'll forgive me. Michael Gove's been away from... He might have that accent, and he may have been educated here, mate, but he is not Scottish.
I'm not claiming
he's a creature of London, and he has been for his entire adult life.
His enemies will point out his origins, and that will be enough to stop him leading the Tories. Anything else on this? No?
Tired.
I'm a bit, brings you down when you spend too much time considering the future of politics in this country.
Particularly when there's so many Tories involved in the conversation. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
Has Jackson Carlo not tweeted anything to embarrass himself to bits?
Well, aye, he tweeted about how outrageous it would be if we were to have a lockdown that kept English people out. Presumably, he and Andrew Bowie was another one. Presumably, they both think it's okay to stop people driving from Leicester to Nottingham, but it's not okay to stop them driving from Leicester to Edinburgh.
Good point. Good point.
There you go.
And the hypocrisy that rips out of Jackson Carlo every single day. I mean, come on. Fair play to him. He gets out of his bed, shaves that fat face he has every day, and he must be able to look himself in the eye and just think, you know what, pension. It's all about how much money I've got in my pocket. And if I'm a big enough arsehole, they might even give me a place in the House of Lords at some point.
I have to admit, I'm very surprised that Ruth hasn't got her K, as they call it now.
Right.
We'll see. Well, I think we'll call it a day at that then, guys. Thanks, Jimmy Hutton, Stuart Lockhead, and Norrie Stewart. Thank you for listening, folks. And we'll catch up with you tomorrow. What's happening tomorrow? The Scottish stats come out tomorrow, so we'll no doubt have something to say there.
I think we'll get PMQs. I think Parliament's in London still sitting, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's a busy day tomorrow.
No, we've not got FMQs. Edinburgh's no sitting, so.
Oh, that's true. But she'll be in.
Aye, we'll get her at 12:30, so we'll get half an hour of Boris, and then we can switch over to Nicola for a bit of palate cleansing.
And then Thursday we get a roundup of what the announcement of the decisions that they might make for the 2 metre versus 1 metre.
Yeah.
And what else might be happening on the changes to the lockdown.
Aye, it'll be interesting to see what the scientific advice is on social distancing on Thursday. Eh? Do you think Scotland will change in any way?
I think it will change. I have to say, I do think it will change.
I think we might get a change outdoors because you're going to get outdoor spaces opening up. Is it Monday?
Well, zoos are open.
Well, she was fairly. It was interesting when she was asked about ferries today. You know.
There's an ongoing issue with the ferries, but they're kind of getting it for both sides. I feel a little bit sorry for Calmac. They're kind of getting people for island communities saying to them, listen, we really don't want a huge influx of people here. And then you're getting folk from island communities who run B&Bs or hotels saying, Kim, what? We need this influx of people and we need you, because right now there's only a 13-day window where you can book. So if you're going to an island for 2 weeks, you can book your ferry over there, but you've got to wait till you're on the island to book your return journey, which is a strange one. But I do feel a wee bit sorry for the ferry companies.
All I meant, Jim, was that she said more than she needed to about the limitations to the numbers going on the ferries. She hinted there'd be changes there. In other words, the 2 metre distance might be varied because it might go down to 1 metre and vary. It would vary. It won't be all just uniform.
Right. Well, on the unscheduled subject.
Aye. Okay. Sorry, Norman.
Yes, boss.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Bye for now.